Australia's health sector is among three industries that will be substantially hit by a skills gap inside the next 10 to 15 years, with the ageing workforce retiring. The latest Clarius Skills Index revealing for every 110 health professionals who retire, there will only be 84 qualified people to replace them. Let's get more now with Kym, Chief Executive Officer of the Clarius Group of recruitment companies. Kym, welcome as always.
Thank you.
Is this one inevitability of that so-called two-speed, if not multi-speed economy, that keeping, at least of all, training people in this space is becoming an ever harder ask?
Absolutely. We're certainly seeing at the moment a softening of demand for skills, but that's not changing the scenario in a couple of areas that we foresee down the track, with an ageing workforce and a reduction of people coming through into these qualifications that will have a dramatic impact over the next 5 to 10 years.
Is that inevitably seeing this sector pushing in terms of wages for increases that perhaps are going and are skewing that particular series of roles or not? I mean, how are they, in other words, transitioning and preparing for such a time?
Well, look, you have to look at each sector individually, and you'd say if you looked at engineering, then that is being reflected in wage pressure. You really are in a position to be able to command higher salary levels in engineering. I wouldn't say we're seeing the same impact in education and health, although there are some initiatives to get more people going into those areas. They just don't appear to be hitting the mark.
It's quite a broad sweep of roles, isn't it? It's not simply nursing, for instance. It goes across the spectrum. So at what point do you declare, if anything, a crisis in this area?
Look, I think the time is really now. You know, we see some of the impact of shortages already. So, you know, to look at it and think that we're going to be 25 or 30% worse off in 5 to 10 years, you really start to wonder what it's going to look like. And I think, you know, more needs to be done to attract people into these areas of employment.
Let's say that some of these roles will simply not be replaced, but in turn we will place less emphasis on the need for these roles. Area dietitians. In other words, if you can't afford to pay to go to an expensive dietitian, well, frankly, don't bother.
Yeah, look, that's the obvious natural progression, I suppose. It would be a tragedy to see that happen. I mean, we live in a world where more and more people, because of the way we live, do need that type of expertise. And yes, it is expensive, and you know, it says something about our healthcare system that it's not available for every person, given, you know, the amount of money that goes into healthcare in this country.
Are these arguments, Kym, that are being sort of put in the kind of the nuanced way that they might be to get political traction? In other words, to spell out that this isn't simply a pure bald job skills shortage, but it maybe crosses over into areas like health in the rounds, for instance, and therefore if that's going to be at some cost to the taxpayer, that's of a big concern.
Yeah, and look, I think if you ask most Australians, and I can't speak for everybody obviously, but I think most of us would prefer to see more of our tax dollars going into these areas. We will all at some point in time be on the health system, and you know, those of us who have been through any health crisis understand the importance of good nursing and available doctors and beds, and you know, really feeling like that if you know you're in a health crisis, you've got the solution there.
Briefly, finally, you say that the market is cyclical. Now, in that respect, are you saying it will bounce back, or if everything's true that we've been saying, is this one instance where it won't?
Look, it's really hard to tell. You know, this is like no other cycle I've ever seen. I've been in the employment market or the employment industry for 17 years, and you know, once upon a time we could look in a crystal ball and say, yes, we're coming out of a downturn and we know exactly what that will look like. This is different to anything we've ever seen before, and largely it's hard to predict what's going to happen, because never have we seen a downturn or a recovery so driven by sentiment and every day changing. You know, today there's positive hiring intentions, tomorrow something happens in Greece or some other obscure place in the world and everybody puts everything on hold again. The only thing I will say is even though we're seeing a freeze in permanent hiring, that doesn't seem to be slowing contract employment, which suggests that the needs are there. It's really about confidence that's seeing people slack off on terms of making those hard decisions.
Kym, we are going to have to leave, but listen, as always, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.